Okay, welcome everybody who's joining us for today's webinar. Thrilled to have you here. We're going to give everybody a few moments to get settled and join in before we kick this off. But nice to see some very familiar names logging in to spend a lunch hour with us.
That's right. Good to see everyone that I've met. Great to meet everyone that I haven't. Looking forward to it.
We are really pumped to talk about lifecycle management with you for the next 45 minutes or so. The intention while we're waiting for folks to kind of file in here is to make this interactive. So you're going to hear Jamison and I talk a whole bunch about our experience and our product and how we're solving pain today. But we would love to make sure that you guys are engaged. We have a couple polls for you to get things kicked off here that we'll start with. But if you have questions throughout this presentation, feel free to drop it in the chat. And again, just giving a few moments for folks to file in here while we get ready to kick things off on this wonderful, is it Wednesday today? Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Perfect. And we just got the heads up that I can actually allow for you guys to talk to us. So we might try that out. If you do want to talk live, let us know. We'll get things kicked off here and we'll give it another couple minutes. Sound good, Jamison?
Works for me.
Well,
And I can't see names. I'm just trying to see if there's anybody out there that I've talked to before.
I was able to get into the names. If you go to participants, we can see the attendees list.
Well,
So
I think
next
it's
to like
because I'm sharing.
oh, good point. Good point. If you tell me who you're looking for.
Everybody.
Everyone. Sounds good. Perfect. Well, I believe I'm going to go ahead and get us kicked off here while we have, I think, a big bulk of the folks that are coming in. Welcome, everybody, to our Lifecycle Management Focused Lunch and Learn. This is the first Lunch and Learn we're doing this year. We would love to pull and ask you a question. And our question to you, which should be popping up on your screens, is which challenge comes up most often when working in your customer environments? And we're going to let those responses come in here. And Jamison, are you able to see the responses as well?
I can see the polls, don't see responses.
Okay, I'm watching live time as people are responding back, and it's a resounding, well, it's changing by the second, so we'll give everybody another couple minutes
I
to.
have I have a guess on what it could be, but I'm anxious to see what the answers are.
Cool. We've got about 40, almost 50% participation so far, so we'll give this a minute. And really, we're looking just to understand the personas of the folks on this Lunch and Learn today and where we can help and kind of cater this conversation based upon your responses. So we'll leave this open for another minute or so as we kind of go through. Right now, it's looking like time spent gathering information is the leader. So we'll give it another moment and see if that continues to be the case. But really interesting that we're seeing a bunch of other responses come in as well.
And
Cool.
that was my guess, by the way, to the crowd out there.
Was
Time
it?
spent gathering information. I'm sorry, I cut
Perfect.
someone off.
No, just me,
Okay.
which I feel like I'm a chatterbox to begin with, so feel free to cut me off.
No
Um,
worries.
we're at 71% participation, which I think is pretty dang good. I'd love to get to 80. So if you're one of the handful of folks who hasn't responded to the poll, would love for you to do that real quick. And then we'll go through the results and again, be thinking about these responses as we're going through our webinar with you today. Cool. I say we call it. Do you want to go ahead and end the poll?
Yep.
All right, y'all. This is where we landed. 40% of you selected time spent gathering information. The next leading factor was limited visibility into services, and then inaccurate data, and lastly, unexpected issues after deployment. I think pretty in line with what we feel today and how we kind of solve these issues. How about you, Jamison?
100%. Especially when we think about there's two perspectives that everyone on this call thinks from. number one, it's the customer, right? I think that's universally what we all end with. But from our perspective, you guys are our number one customer, right? So we need to make sure that we're not only tailoring our conversation, but the value is not only present but apparent from an advisor's perspective, right? As you're building businesses, as you're not only growing your customer base, but retention of new logos is the hardest thing in the business. And this is candidly what the goal of this is, right? Is to show you how lifecycle management, specifically around our platform, not only can help you pre-sale and post-sales as you kind of dig in and grow your customers, not just that one-time sale, but how do I make that multiple sales? How do I give them insight into their infrastructure? Ultimately, what we're trying to go here, guys, is to make data-based decisions, which doesn't necessarily happen if we look back at time and through technology. So, not a surprise.
Love to hear it. Let's go over our agenda for the session today, and then I'll kick it off to Jamison after. So we plan to cover three main topics with you throughout today's conversation. We're going to kick it off with what we're calling life without lifecycle management. So what are common challenges that customers are facing, and in turn, what other advisors are facing in terms of complications there, how it impacts you in your day-to-day and your ability to be strategic. We're then going to hop into life with lifecycle management, talk through benefits to the customer, but also benefits to you as an advisor, talk through a few case studies, and then we're going to end it with, great, you've heard life without, life with. How do you sell lifecycle management? What's the conversation starter? How are you positioning this information? And how can we help you kind of be successful in those conversations? And just because we can't help it, we're going to kick it off with another poll. Now, Jamison, do you want to talk us through those questions?
Yeah, so I guess guys, the purpose of here today is to make sure again, not only we tailor our communication specific to the audience, but also you took time out of your day to come join us. We want to make sure this is applicable to you guys. But question number one is, where does most of your information live with all your customers? We get a wide range of answers here. It'd be helpful to kind of get a consolidated perspective from your view. We tried our best to consolidate this into four different answers. Ultimately, it's data gathering, right? Is before you sell, you have to have a target, and how do you find that target? Question number two, before you recommending that solution or recommending that product, how much time is that actually taking you, right? So we talked about where you're getting the information. Now transitioning to how much time does that take? The reason that is applicable here is ROI is the statement that makes everybody happy, right? If it's positive, I think we're all on good lights. Negative, we have some work to do, right? So we're really thinking about your sales cycle. How do you sell to your customers? So that's where both of those questions are derived from.
I love it. I'm going to try and locate where I can see the poll responses. So give me 1 minute. Perfect. And again, we'll give that another couple moments to pull in here. Appreciate your participation. Here's where we're standing. First question around carrier portals, where does most of your info come from? We're seeing invoices being a big primary driver, waiting for a few more to come in there, but invoices being a big piece, customer spreadsheets being second, and then neck and neck would be carrier portals in a mix of all three. And then for the second question, where we're sitting right now is the leading answer being multiple days. So could be a large amount of time. Again, not shocked by this, just checking to see if we have other folks joining in here. Feel free to respond to this poll while you're snacking on some lunch. But again, in line with what we're seeing, I think, in the industry, and after working with advisors and understanding what value they're bringing in, what sources they're using today, common to be using invoices for sure. Perfect. Okay, Jamison, do you want to keep going? Anything you want to add with regards to those two responses?
No, again, candidly, not a surprise.
Yeah.
had the pleasure of working indirectly most of my career, and these are the common challenges, right? And from my perspective, again, speaking from a position of not only selling all these things that we're managing, but now coming into a platform that consolidates the view of them, consolidates the management of them. Again, one place to find, buy, and manage technology is ultimately what Lifecycle is. Not a surprise to me, but also if you think about it from this perspective, it is also showing that we have a green field, right? So if you
Yep.
think about if you want to go sell circuits, you want to go sell mobility, or all the traditional things that you would sell in telecom, the green field is not as wide as the software needed to manage those things. So therein lies the opportunity for you guys. Again, I'll repeat this until I go dead. This is a pipeline builder for you. For those of you who have a junior sales staff, you're looking to acquire new logos. We all know the facts, right? The cost of acquisition is high. So, how do we manage the customers that we already have? The answer is lifecycle management. How do we grow the prospects that we do not yet have as a customer? First, you got to get the information so you know you're targeting the right thing, and that also leads to lifecycle management. So, again, no surprise from my perspective. What is candidly very exciting is that everybody on this call seems to share some of those opinions. So looking
Yeah.
forward to it. I think as far as the poll goes, good by me.
All right, we promised that was the last poll during this session. And honestly, I was hoping to be shocked in some way, but it's good to see that we still are understanding kind of the sources people are using and how long it's taking. I think that'll help us pinpoint and cater the conversation based upon those responses. So thank you for humoring us. All right, go ahead and kick it off with the life cycle wheel.
Yep. So here's this concept of life cycle management, right? And what is life cycle? My parallel or kinship that I would say is cloud 10 years ago or SD-WAN 10 years ago when it was just a blanket statement, more of a hot button, but you got to do some education, you got to do some research to really understand what that truly means. So I'll kind of walk us through what we define as life cycle. Good synonyms for us is, Workday is a lifecycle management system for an employee. Salesforce is lifecycle management of a deal, right? But there is no real life cycle of IT, which therein lies where we get this concept from. So when we talk about one place to find, buy, and manage IT, that's exactly what we're looking for. So if you look at this wheel, everything starts with design, right? And before you have design, you want to have data. So that's where we're kind of going from that perspective. So if you think about this from left to right, you got to design it, you have to source it, you have to manage contracts, right? A big gray area, I think, in my opinion, especially when we talk in terms of customers. Usually, and I would assume from y'all's perspective, when you do get a customer, you get the contract. They may not store it, but you also don't have track of everything else, right? Things that you're not selling to them. So this is one way of kind of shifting that focus to a global view of all contracts. Again, from the customer's perspective, one place that I have all my contracts in a repository, one source of truth. It's not living on Jamison's desktop and Jamison goes on PTO. It is visible to all. And again, from your perspective, agnostic of what you're sourcing to your customer, imagine one place to see all contracts they have for all services. Again, customers love it because they get to have that one view. You should absolutely love it because now you have that target to go say, yes, it makes sense for me to go review your hosted voice contracts because now I can see them versus having to ask customer A, can you give me every contract for every service? Very rarely is that going to happen because from their perspective, not a huge value to them. In this world, it becomes a huge value to them because now they're managing their contracts. The byproduct of that is you get visibility. So again, we think about stage one, planning and procurement. We have to design it. We have to source it. We have to get the contracts. Then we move into I've purchased an asset, right? From that perspective, we go into the what I call the name of the game, right? Is can you deliver? Everybody has a great product. The nuances between technology can be very thin to me, and I would assume most of you agree in this aspect. Really, where the rubber meets the road is can you deliver? Can you do the things that you say we're going to do? So we have within the same portal, within the same methodology, order management, right? So now taking an order from buying it to now getting it installed. Once it is then installed, we move to asset management. So that same item or asset becomes trackable, meaning you can assign it to any asset, person, place, or thing, subsidiary, if you're in M&A activity, huge value add here because I can assign it to a specific location, a specific state, to allow for a global ability to manage those assets, but then a ad hoc ability to separate them and manage them a la carte if needed. Again, we look at it as an asset, network device, mobile phone, any of those assets that fit in that realm, we simply assign as an asset. She'll be able to track from that perspective. Now that we have it installed, we have that asset tracked. Next thing is we want to support it, right? We want to make sure those assets are getting the ROI that they deserve. So again, now with VCOM, we also have 24/7, 365 knock based in San Ramon, California, that can support those assets. So think about not only one place to buy or find technology, but then again, as I mentioned, manage that same technology. So again, this is a hybrid, right? So you think about a telecom expense management platform or thought process in addition to managed services. Now we're picking up supporting that asset. So now we have operations managed. So again, just to recap, started at planning and procurement. Now we're in operations management. Now moving over to I have that asset, it is tracked, it is supported. Now I need to lead it into accounting, right? I got to pay for it. So one place now we move into expense management. Now we move into invoicing. So as I mentioned, just about contracts, very similar to contracts. Now we have one place to manage all invoices. So for the customer's perspective, one place that they could find all invoices, agnostic of carrier, agnostic of source, agnostic of technology, to then also pay if they choose that option. So this is the one-stop shop where they can find, buy, and manage the technology. And then the most important piece, right, is at the end of the year for every company in the world, and sometimes more than every once a year. But if you're going in M&A activity, if you're reporting up to a board, which is most of the companies in this world today, seems like. Now we have to have the analytics behind it, right? So where are those assets at? How much does it cost me to track those assets? And furthermore, what is my liability across all of those assets? So I have just captured lifecycle management in a very long-winded answer. I'd like to open up the floor. Any thoughts, questions, ideas as we talk through this?
We've got a question coming in from the audience.
Okay.
And Sharif, I may need your help clarifying this a little bit, but the question that Sharif has asked is, has vendor sprawl been a popular initiative? And I would like to better understand what vendor sprawl means to you. Jamison, if you feel comfortable, feel free to start answering, but I wanted to just see if there's clarity there.
If I'll give you a couple seconds there, but I think I understand where you're going from. Is it popular from a customer's perspective? To me, when I hear popular, I think it's a positive. I would probably substitute popular with yes, it's consistent, meaning very rarely are we talking to customers where they don't have vendor sprawl. And just a quick definition from my perspective, vendor sprawl is very simple. I've got a lot of different assets, a lot of
Yep.
different vendors, and I have to manage all those things together, which means I have to have lots of relationships in which I do not have time to manage.
That's exactly what Sharif mentioned and kind of was going with the question. Holistically agree. I think a big piece of lifecycle management is understanding what you have and where you have it to make smarter, more strategic decisions about the business, including the advisor using that information to guide their customer through, right? So a big piece of this relationship is not only the customer having access to this information, and we'll get more into that, the benefits of it, but your ability to help be a strategic asset to your customer based upon the information in the software and making decisions to consolidate and create clarity on what their network and mobile environment or IT environment looks like today. We have another question coming in. Sharif, let us know if that was the right lane that you were looking for a response in. We have another question coming in from Keegan. And Keegan's asking, do you feel like the easiest way to bring clarity to clients is starting with expense management? Based on the poll, it seems that is where the main struggle starts.
So, Keegan, great question. Number one, yes, I completely agree. I think about it from this perspective, right? The typical, and I'm assuming a lot of things, but based on my experience, I think a little bit this is in line. Most of the time, when you start any engagement, it's all about data gathering, right? It's what do you have, where do you have it? Then we can start to have the more complex conversations. That is a less advanced synonym for expense management. Expense management is exactly that. It's finding out where things are, finding out how much they're paying. Here's why I think expense management leading into expense management and then sprawling out to anything. I call it, it's the hammer. It's the hammer to any deal you want to sell, no matter what the technology is. Agnostic, become whatever you'd like to sell. Expense management is a good start because all you're doing is you're eliminating assumptions. You're eliminating the CIO saying, I think I'm paying this here, or I think I have circuits there, or I think I have a mobile phone here, or maybe they're using it there. All those are eliminated. So we're now speaking from facts. So we know what they're paying, not only for each individual person within their company, but each individual technology under their company. Within that kind of thought process, we're also seeing where they're leaking, meaning we can show variances of how much they've paid for hosted voice from January to February. All of those things lead you to multiple conversations of expansion. So I think the quick answer is yes, it's absolutely the best way to start, especially when you think about enterprise customers. One of the biggest assets you can be, not only as an advisor, but anything from technology perspective is we've had a couple things that have happened in the last 10 years. Number one, we have way more technology than we've ever had to deal with in life. We're also dealing with companies who have smaller teams than they've ever had to deal with, right? So you got people that have subtracted, technologies is added. That doesn't equate to a lot of efficiency there. So what expense management truly is applying data to make better decisions and then adding efficiency to business operations. Ultimately, that's always going to lead you to a better buying process, no matter what you're selling.
I love that. I'm going to piggyback off that answer, Jamison, and just hit on expense management a little tighter. From an advisor perspective, it's not uncommon for an advisor to go into a conversation and start with a question that's something like, do you understand what you're paying for today? Are you paying on time? Are you GL coding your information? And 9 times out of 10, depending upon the persona of the person that you're talking with, which could be finance, could be head of IT, it is a natural place to start. It's not the only place to start. So just to be clear, I think expense is a big Pandora's box in terms of isolating, oh man, I'm paying for something that I thought I closed a location on 7 years ago, right? Or I have duplicate services where I wasn't expecting redundancy at a location. It can really open a customer's eyes and advisor's eyes into where the waste is. But there are certainly other points of entrance based upon what you're looking for. It could be a big project someone's working on that they're looking to get a hold of, but very, very natural to start in the expense space.
Yeah, and
Okay,
just real quick,
go ahead.
I want to
Yeah,
bring one concept up, which it was perfect that this question was asked. When we
yeah.
talk about pain, so again, when you think about, there's two different lanes we can go down, right? There's customer A that says, I have a problem with my network, fix my network, right? So that's them telling you their pain. There's also the customer or prospect in your case that you meet in an elevator and you don't necessarily know what to talk about. So expense management then becomes your way to go find the pain. I think ultimately, and I think everybody can agree on this call, we're all looking for pain to then solve a problem. So expense management with a prospect that you don't know about an ability to find that pain. You also have the caveat of someone you know, or even that new prospect that tells you their pain. Either way, the best way for all of us to be successful is to find that pain, fix that pain. Expense
Hmm.
management is just another way to do that.
I love that. We have more questions coming in. So Keegan asked a really good second question, and question is, remind me, can VCOM show multiple entities? For example, I have a client that is expanding into the States. I know Canadian dollars is not supported yet, but they have multiple LLCs, multiple locations, etc.
That answers yes, Keegan. So all of the assets, again, that's why we call them assets. They can be attached to anything you deem necessary. If that's a state, if that's a subsidiary or company, as long as all the billing or ownership is one centralized location, we can separate it as and go as granular as you'd like. In addition to that, our platform is not a cost per user. So if your customer signs up, they get unlimited users. Those users can also have specific access where they only see certain entities. So the answer to that from an asset perspective is yes. In addition to that, from a user perspective, the answer is also yes. Hopefully that answers your question there, Keegan.
I love it. Sharif's coming in with another question, and I love that Sharif and Keegan are so engaged. I really appreciate it. Feel free, anybody else, if you have questions, we'd love to hear from you as well. Keep them coming, Keegan and Sharif. So here's the next question. Is there a technology item that you don't cover? Also, are you looking at all of the endpoints or devices within their environment as well? If they wanted to look at all their devices from an IT asset management perspective, ITAM, is that something you do?
So the short answer to that is yes. We do look at all assets. Where we stop in some cases, right? So I'll give the example of SaaS. We do track SaaS as an asset, so we know how much you pay for it, where it's attached to, term, et cetera, et cetera. Where we stop as it pertains to SaaS is once we get in the application. So what we do not do is we don't do optimization of application. We do cost control and tracking of that asset. So that's the little nuance difference there. As it pertains to network, I think that's the easiest relatable asset for us. Network, we're tracking that network asset. They can call us and say, I've got an issue with that circuit. We will act on the behalf of the customer. Where we stop is the LAN, right? So anything on the WAN we will support, anything on the LAN out of our expertise. Same thing with mobile phones, right? So we monitor and manage the phones and the plans. Where we stop is when we get on the phone. So any MDM applications, anything antivirus, anything user based on the phones is where we stop. Outside of that, six categories of spin that we can track: network, mobile, collaboration, any application that talks to another one, hosted voice, easiest example, cloud, hardware, SaaS. So six categories of technology that we can support from an expense management perspective. Two different categories where we support end to end, that is network and mobility. The others fall into expense management.
Love it, Jamison. You're coming in hot with these answers. Appreciate it. If that helped answer your question, give us a shout out. The one thing I'd mention is if you're having an interesting conversation and you want to hear more about whether or not that particular product fits into how we solve pain today, reach out. We'll give you the honest answer and share with you if that's in our roadmap. We'd love to hear what you guys are coming up against and if that should be something we are supporting if we aren't already. Cool. And we got some feedback from Sharif already. And Sharif, hopefully I'm pronouncing your name right. Give me a shout if I'm pronouncing it wrong. Let me know. We're going to move on to our next slide, and Jamison's going to kick us off with life without lifecycle management.
Yeah. So again, guys, this is kind of a encapsulation of the first two questions, right? What do I do if I don't have lifecycle management? This is pretty common, right? I think we'll move past this quickly because I think you guys have this pain, right? It's limited visibility in telecom environments, all the scattered invoices and portals, right? And if you think about portals, portals by itself is a loaded question. Any product has a portal. So imagine eliminating all the individual portals and having one portal. That is what VCOM is. Again, agnostic of sourcing as well. So if they sourced outside of VCOM or with VCOM, doesn't matter to us. All of this is an overlay on top of what they have. Use case for that is customers that are in between M&A activity, they got a big PE injection, or just like most customers, they don't have everything expire in one day. We don't require sourcing in any aspect, or they can do in a hybrid model where they source through us or not, manage everything or not. So just want to keep that in mind. It's a common kind of pushback that we get is, hey, I'd love to have this conversation, but we're in the middle of a contract. I would assume most of you can kind of share my pain there where no one wants to hear that. But now we have an answer, and this is what life with life cycle management is, and I'll kind of dig into that after. But just to kind of reiterate here, life without life cycle management really is a manual process. What we're ultimately challenging is the status quo. It's I've kept it on a spreadsheet. We're all good. Johnny in the basement has all the data. No need to ask those questions. This is a challenge that, candidly, for us and advisors speaking to customers, it's educational. So I would start with this conversation. Life without life cycle management is hard. You guys are understanding that. You're used to it. In order to get life with life cycle management, it is educational. It is not like selling a circuit or a sock or a shoe. It is not just a difference in $100 versus 105. It is truly educational. So I'll start by saying, in order to get life with life cycle management, number one, you guys got to be educated and exposed. Number two, bring us in to help with the conversation. We deal with it every day, all day. To boot, most companies today are also dealing with the pain that lifecycle management solves. So don't think about it as a sales tactic or a pushy way to get into a customer. Ultimately, think about this as, how do I improve business efficiency? Some of you guys I know and I've dealt with for years on this call. I've seen how you go to market, and most of which is pretty common, right? It's, how do I help the customer? It's not necessarily how do I sell them. That is the byproduct of helping them. But number one, it's helping. So again, just speaking from a life without life cycle management perspective, just really want to, any questions there?
I'll hit on a couple things while we're waiting for them to come in. I think from an advisor perspective, what I hear a lot in the industry has to do with finding ways to have trust built within their relationship with their customer. And I think a lot of trust from that perspective comes with your expertise and your ability to give feedback and strategy based upon data. Right? We can all speak to generalities of pain points in the industry based upon product or multi-location sites, but having access to data in one house is a huge amplifier to compound continuous feedback to a customer and start creating a long roadmap of strategy based upon what you see. That means loading invoices on a regular basis to be able to see how things are trending, to then make decisions based upon what you're seeing when something comes off of contract. Many times we're hounding for a copy of an invoice or a copy of a CSR or a copy of data that's a point in time reference. And think about how amplified and again compounded that could be if you get month over month information right alongside your customer to help guide them to that endpoint, which could be 3, 5, 10 years down the line as they transform their business. So when I think about life with or without, the big difference is visibility for you to help continue to be the guider of that relationship. And I know we're now in life with lifecycle management. Probably not shocking to you guys that we're big believers in this process. Jamison, why don't you kick us off with life with lifecycle management?
Yeah. So again, we talked about the concept of what life cycle management is. We then shifted to the liabilities that are exposed without it. Now I'm just speaking from the perspective of now being on the other side, and not only from your perspective being bought off on the concept, but ultimately your customer prospect as well. Again, from a customer's perspective, now we get into the meat and potatoes, right? And I really think this is important to understand. There are two different values at play. One of them is more present than the other, and I think that is the value to the customer, right? So, mutual benefit, by the way, right? So, value to the customers, they get to see everything, they know everything. Number two, big value, especially in this market today. I can't tell you how many times I've ran a sales cycle, everything's gone well, and then Monday morning hits and whoever I'm speaking to moved to another job. And now we have to deal with another contact. And ultimately, without life cycle management, for us and you, we're restarting the conversation. We have to start all over with the sales process. So life with life cycle management looks differently. Instead of saying, Mr. Customer who just started 2 days ago, I'd love to know more about what you want to do in your initiatives, their typical response is going to be, give me 6 months so I can catch my breath and understand what things are. Or imagine a world where you can simply give them access to this platform that has all their data, houses all their information. So at the click of a button, themselves can answer the question that you're asking. They can then answer the question to the board, to the PE firm, to anyone who wants to know, where are my assets? How much am I paying? What is my cost of service? Where are they assigned? All these things come with the access of lifecycle management. So again, that scenario of a new CTO that just started, you become an asset to him or them or she. You become the keys to the castle. You become the answers to the questions that they would take 6 months to get, all because you have a platform that is now housing information, agnostic of people, agnostic of a PTO. It doesn't get sick. You now have one source of truth that you are the conduit for, that you're now introducing to that new contact. And let's take it from the other side, where a scenario where I've got an existing person that's there and they're not leaving. For them, becomes the source of truth, right? It becomes a way for them to eliminate the things that they don't like to do. No one likes to track down a bill. No one likes to track down a contract. All these things that happen naturally through expense management. From an asset perspective, knowing what everything costs in one portal, one view, to know how many tickets have been opened across all of those assets. Huge value, not just to your customer. Now switching to you as an advisor, you now have a target. You can say in one click, I have 15 assets that are out of contract in the next 6 months. Let me go have a conversation with my customer. In addition to that, this is a sell with environment. Any piece of revenue that is derived from our platform, you are automatically commissioned on. So I just want to call out some of the nuances. Sometimes advisors ask the question, like, what do you go around me to sell? It is impossible in our world. We're only an indirect channel. When you bring in a logo, you're protected across that logo, not the deal. That is a difference in the market compared to most. Sometimes they track deals. In our instance, we are locking you into that logo. So you bring the logo, it is your logo, whatever growth automatically goes to you. So again, from an advisor perspective, I think this is really super important for you guys to receive. This is a pipeline. This is your ability to then go find deals, find business, find opportunities inside of your base. I talked about cost of acquisition, a new logo earlier. This eliminates that. This is the customer that you have already spent time to gain a relationship. On the other end, for them, they don't have to gain another relationship. They can stick with you, and no matter what you want to sell them, you now have the data to support that. So, really important slide. I really want to make sure we spend some time here. Any questions pop up?
I'm going to hit on one thing while we wait, but I did want to go
Okay.
back and ask one question on behalf of Sharif because I missed this in our earlier convo, and then I'll hit on another, I'll double down on some advisor value.
Sure.
Sharif is asking, curious, do you have any joint engagements with Flexera? Are they a partner? I actually don't know the answer to this question. So we
I
might need to
don't.
take that back, but I wanted to check with you.
Yeah, we'll get back to you on that, Sharif. I don't know that
Okay,
answer.
cool. Uh, and then Sharif
But
also
hold on
said,
one second. Now that he's asked that question, I think let me cover this
sure.
basis as well. Oftentimes, platforms like this are white labeled. Just so everyone is clear, we own our code, we manage our code. We are not white labeling, and we do not offer white labeling today. So what you see through VCOM is all VCOM. The only reason I say that is oftentimes you do see a white label platform, or we have the conversations at times with advisors like yourselves that we're already doing expense management. That does not prohibit you from doing what you did before. This is simply a tool to add to the tool bed. So if you look at that wheel, each of these elements can be sourced and or used a la carte, meaning you do not have to buy the whole house in order to get the benefit. So just want to call that out. It's a typical pushback we get around those questions.
I love that. And then Sharif has already told us they have a meeting next week with a customer who would be a really good fit for this type of product, and they'd like for us to join. So we'll reach out. We would love to join that conversation and understand more about the customer, more about what they're looking for, and partner with you on that. Cool. Doubling down on the advisor piece, I just want to hit on one thing, which is where I'm seeing value in our relationship today when an advisor chooses to partner with VCOM, an AppDirect company. A big piece of this is that visibility. Again, you're hearing us talk long-term benefits, long-term strategy, openness, like doors that open for a conversation that you may have not been able to get into prior. The analytics piece of our environment is essential to those conversations to look at trending and have conversations with, depending upon the level of customer that you're working with, whether they're C-suite or VP level or executive level, they're looking for big change that helps them be a hero. And with this, you're allowed and able to make them the hero through that conversation. And where we're seeing that kind of play out is we all know that folks tend to move around in terms of jobs. That can have infinite benefits for you as well as an advisor. If they know that you help them get a big win at a company through that strategic conversation, through that visibility, you're going to be the first person they call for the next gig that they're working on to solve exactly the same problems based upon the industry they're going into. But I'm seeing a lot of value from an advisor perspective in the partner portal, which we won't hit on too much in this conversation. But it really allows for you to enter into the customer's environment and again, walk through that life cycle with them, understand the pain point, get ahead of the conversation, let them know that you have their back, and again, increase that loyalty as you continue to step into their environment. Cool. That's all I had to say.
All right, I think it rolls right into the next topic. I think how
Cool.
advisors sell lifecycle management.
Okay, let's go. So, uh, of course, you're going to kick it off with starting the conversation. So, understanding the pain point. You're hearing Jamison and I lean into what is the pain? Because I think that's the most current top of mind topic that a customer can get into. And that might be as simple as asking, what do you do today? How do you manage XYZ? How do you manage your spend? How do you manage change in your environment? What tools are you using today? What systems are you using today? And really talking through, I think about it as time savings, right? If you have a high level employee, even a couple people working on this type of work today, it changes their environment from, yes, I'd spend 80 hours a month going and pulling invoices, looking at the information, checking and seeing what that looks like, to then make decisions. And they can quickly change into, I'm pulling information, and it changes into, I'm now making decisions based upon a system that's pulling that information for me. So again, asking those simple questions that uncover the pain, uncover the gaps, uncover the waste in a process, if you will, to then pinpoint how to kind of have that conversation, whether it be network, mobile, or their entire IT spend, truly understanding where they're coming from today. So that's the first piece. Jamison, anything you want to add on with regards to starting the conversation?
No, I think, starting the conversation, in my opinion, first comes with listening to what they say, right?
Absolutely.
So
Yeah,
usually for customers, especially in our perspective, right, is they hear lifecycle management, they hear expense management, and they are turned off by those words because they're used to typically how people push those. That's why I think, as Jessica mentioned, starting with some uncovering questions. And again, we have a couple questions that help you with discovery, and we can push those out to you guys after this. But really, truly, ultimately, what they're doing is what you would naturally do in your sales process anyway, right? It's finding where to start the conversation.
yep.
Again, from my perspective, it's educational. So I think number one is just making sure you have an audience that can listen. Number two, once you find that pain, do not focus on the pain. Continue to listen because usually they're going to tell you more pain that they didn't mention in the first conversation.
Totally. And I would say, in addition to that, thinking long term, right? Broad strokes. What is a perfect state scenario to you? Like as close to perfect as you can get to. Great. Here's the pain, or here's what's happening. What would you love for this to look like? And then backing into the solution and how the software or the experience can help guide to that long-term solution or that North Star is really helpful. We have a raised hand, so I'll stop there for a minute before we get into additional strategic positioning. I don't know how to give Sharif the right to talk to us or the ability to talk to us. Let's see. And hopefully this is resonating with all of y'all and kind of what you're seeing today. Think a couple of our peers that are on here. Oh, mistake. Okay, perfect. Sharif, just wanted to make sure we got you covered while the question was hot, if there was one. So talking more about, I would say, visibility, that North Star, what they want to be able to do with their business, what their goals are as an employee of that business or a shepherd of that business is really keen to understand. If you're talking with an operations leader, that pain and that visibility point is going to be different than maybe a finance leader, than an IT professional, and really understanding kind of what that looks like to help position the many different points that our software and solution can solve for. So that's I would say the first piece is that strategic positioning of what is that end state? What does that look like long term for you? How do you win? And jotting that down to make sure that as we deliver, we're giving them that win or we're giving them the tools to get that win. The next point that we're hitting on is kind of that data driven decision making. You heard me hit on analytics prior in one of these slides. A big piece of this is to see the full life cycle and all of the great data that comes from all of your vendors being in one spot, right? All of your vendors being in one spot, being able to see it in one house to tell a full picture story and guide the conversation based upon that. So to me, I think it's a bigger play to say, not just, okay, we're just going to control one site, one type of spend, one carrier. It allows for you to kind of step into a much broader conversation around transformation of the business based upon the information coming into the software. Anything you want to add there, Jameson?
No, I think you hit it spot on.
Sick. Great. Okay. New revenue streams. You heard us hit on recurring revenue based upon our relationship, getting credit or receiving commissions based upon expansion. So let's say that you go into a conversation today and this is a horrible example, but I'm still going to use it. POTS lines, which I know is archaic. Everybody's talking about it, but let's say that a customer has a ton of POTS lines. They don't know where they are, they don't know how many they have, they don't know how many are required, but they know they need to do something about it because spend is skyrocketing in the industry to solve for that. Loading in invoices, getting the inventory in the system, looking at the analytics to drive that conversation. If that customer then decides to make a change, and we're lucky enough to have VCOM be a big part of that story as well, as they transform their environment, you will continue to receive commissions for those changes if they're going through VCOM for that. And then bringing that inventory into the system, that's additional revenue coming in there as well. So that's just an example of using info. The pain points there. Maybe they don't know how big it is or how large of a location they have these services at, to then make a plan, work through us, and we win together and the customer wins too. So recurring subscriptions, recurring commission, expanding on that relationship is a big piece of that. And then longer customer relationships, I would say if a customer has lifecycle management on top of their services that they're sourcing through VCOM or not, going through a different mechanism, being able to pay an invoice through our software, being able to manage their spend, makes that relationship so much more valuable and sticky in the environment. And going through renewals with us, talking through other ideas of projects we can work on together. That customer is going to want to continue to buy in and talk through that conversation with you and with the experts at VCOM together. That's a no-brainer for them to stay with us for a long time. What questions do you guys have? Do we have questions coming in? Let's see.
I think we're good. Sharif,
Cool.
we appreciate the vote of confidence there. We agree. Um,
Cool.
but also I think what's important is let's talk about like how do we make this tangible to you guys, right? Is what does that really look like? We talk about the concept of life cycle management. We talk about expense management. All those sound great, but how do we productize them, right? How do we sell them? So think about it from this perspective. There are four different doors that you can walk into to get inside the VCOM atmosphere. So when we talk about the software and managed services, the lifecycle management, ultimately what we're talking about, three different ways, right? So there's network lifecycle management. So that is, I have a circuit, I want to bring it into inventory. I also want to support it. So I want one person to call, agnostic of carrier, agnostic of type, agnostic of location. I also want one person to mine for contracts, mine for SLA credits, do any disputes. Anything as it pertains to the life cycle of that circuit would be network lifecycle management. That is a cost per circuit. The benefit to that is it comes with expense management, right? So it is not you selling two products, it is you selling one product with an addition bonus that your customer gets to experience expense management. Shifting to mobile lifecycle management, again, a managed services that overlays on top of existing platform. This network lifecycle management, mobile lifecycle management, expense management, agnostic of sourcing. We do have this wonderful buyers club, which is very similar to an aggregator that can provide network mobility, any place, anytime, any source that you need. They do not have to use that in order to get these services. So mobile lifecycle management adds optimization. So we're calling out zero usage. We're really, truly, in essence, doing exactly what the carriers are selling against. The carriers are saying, I'm going to sell you this unlimited plan, and they just want volume. In our world, we're going to say, yes, AJ may need an unlimited plan, while Jessica is only using a very small percentage. So why wouldn't we change Jessica to a metered plan? Because we are monitoring all of these services and all of this usage as a managed service. We are responsible to move that plan up or down if Jessica needs additional data. On the other end of the spectrum, if AJ is not using his phone and he has zero usage, we can cancel that plan. So mobile lifecycle management, just like network, is monitoring everything as it pertains to that asset, becoming one place to call, agnostic of carrier, meaning you could have AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, all in one atmosphere, while the user experience for the customer is the exact same. That again comes with expense management. That is a cost per device. So if it has a SIM card, it has a cost to it, and that's how we do pricing there. Expense management, we charge on a percentage base. So they spend $100, we charge a small percentage of that $100. Expense management is everything that we talked about from a visibility perspective. The only difference between all of the network lifecycle management, mobile lifecycle management, expense management is doing expense management all over the assets. When you add the network and mobile, we're supporting that asset. Meaning, if they don't want to support that asset, they just simply want to do cost allocation, expense management, visibility, manage pay, all the wonderful things that we talked about, they can simply do expense management, which is a little less on the cost side. So again, super easy entry, very cost prohibitive, or I guess cost advantage from our perspective. Network and mobile is we found the pain, let's go fix the pain. That covers our software and managed services, which encapsulate lifecycle management. In addition to that, because we are a bonus company, and the reason I say bonus company is because we don't have many comparisons in the market, because you would have to combine multiple companies in order to compare to us, because we also have a sourcing element. So I talked about this wonderful thing called the Buyers Club. That's where you, just like any other advantage, you get the advantage of using our volume and our wholesale relationships to then buy services. So your customer could then say, well, I got everything in this one platform, makes sense for me to then go start sourcing. That's where we have this concept called the Buyers Club. Now, why I say it's like aggregation, but not, because there's two, or I guess a couple different things that it does. Number one, consolidation, pretty normal. Normalization, what normalization means by definition, I think this is super important. If you've ever seen an AT&T bill, Verizon bill, T-Mobile bill, insert your carrier, they all look different. They have small nuances that make them very complicated to read. You may have a Black Friday special on one bill while you have a Christmas special on the other. We remove all the nuances to those bills when you source through Buyers Club. So your circuit says circuit, your taxes are separated and they say tax, your fees are separated and they say fees. So for your customers out there who say, "Hey, I want to know the cost of my service, but remove the tax." Normally, that is a task that is undefeated. In this world, we do it automatically. So we normalize the information so they have a consistent way to view it, no matter what the carrier is. And then we integrate, meaning we're integrating directly with these carrier platforms. So the mean time to repair, ultimately, which is what keeps us all up or gives us all the ability to go take a vacation, meaning we keep our customers happy. That adds to that, meaning we have direct ties into these carrier platforms. So everything that we're talking about outside of onboarding, which takes a week or so, maybe 6 weeks, depending on what we're onboarding. After that, it becomes completely automated. So the bills just show up. We know what the circuits are doing. It removes the manual lift moving forward and beyond, right? So again, huge concept there. We think about lifecycle management. We've got network, mobile, and expense management. And then we have sourcing on the Buyers Club side. Again, big call out there. We normalize the information, we integrate with the platforms. So now giving your customer, again, find, buy, and manage technology all in one platform. So I'll pause there.
I love it. I'm gonna shout a question from Sharif and then double down on something with regards to advisor involvement on these flexible solutions. So Sharif is asking if I were to think on the segment or line of business we can bring it into finance, IT, operations, HR, would that be correct? I'm thinking stakeholders like CFO or COO. Absolutely correct. Really, I think your positioning based upon the constituent that you're talking to might change in terms of pain, but asking that same high level curious question is going to bring that information out regardless of who you're talking with. Each group is going to have a different part to play in this. If you're talking with IT, they're thinking probably devices or a pain in terms of control of that network. If it's a CFO, they're thinking spend or control of spend or control of wallet. COO might be thinking completely different in terms of deploying different solutions and needing to see visibility. I'm sure Jamison can hit on a few other things like that, but I do think pain is going to be felt regardless in this space. It's just a volatile space, depending upon the carrier that you're working with and the type of solutions you have today. There's an entrance point at any one of those constituents that you mentioned. Jamison, you feel
Yeah.
different?
No, I totally agree. And I'd like to
Cool.
think about it from this perspective, right? Flipping it on the other side as an advisor. As an advisor, if I meet a CTO, let's reverse it. Let's say I meet an HR person on the
Hmm.
elevator. Great contact with the company, but ultimately now my job is, well, great, but how do you introduce me to your CTO? Well, in this world, you actually do have a conversation with HR
Hmm.
because they have applicable needs and they have applicable wants within this. They want to know how much it costs to power employee. They want to know what's my true liability of cost as far as this particular business segment. I can speak to the HR that same answer. For legal, of course, legal has concern here because now we have a liability conversation. How many assets do I have out of term? What is my at risk cost? I can give that same answer. And of course, the
Yep.
CTO, they want to know about their assets. To the people person, right? It's where are the people at? What is assigned to them? Does Jamison Powell have a laptop? All these things are also tracked in this platform. So again, you think about it, we're just naming them assets. What you do with the data is particular to who you're talking to. So if I'm an advisor, this becomes super powerful because it doesn't matter who I'm talking to. As long as I get to the right level of person within the company, regardless of what their specific job function is, I have a story to tell. That doesn't mean that I can't get to the CTO and have the typical technology conversation. It just means now I have two people I can go at and two things I can sell them. So I'm always going to put myself in your shoes because that is ultimately where my skill lies. And it just creates more things that you can talk about with more people within the company. I think we can all share the same appreciation for that because we can't always choose who we meet.
I love that. I would say the last thing to mention is as we go through these onboardings of lifecycle management, you as the advisor gets to be a big part of that conversation and involvement. You're going to gain access to the instance immediately, right? Upon contract signature. I think that's a huge value add tool for as involved as you want to be in the conversation and process. We want for you to be right there alongside the customer if you'd like to be. So we make sure that you are involved in that combo, that you're seeing value as we're loading in that data as well. I know we somehow have 4 minutes left. So do we want to hit on a mobile case study real quick?
I just think it's super impactful
Okay.
to speak specifically to advisors, right? That's the audience that we have here. I think
Yep.
it's important to say, like, this is a case study where the partner found the pain. But when the partner found the pain, they realized, candidly, even I thought before getting this world, it's not worth my time to go talk about mobile. But what this did do, right? So we went through a complete restructuring of their mobile environment using mobile lifecycle management, the product that overlays on top of mobility. We didn't source anything. We simply added overlay support, added overlay visibility into their mobile environment. We found $20,000 a month in unused mobile lines that we instantly eliminated. For the advisor, this became impactful because they were actually looking to find budget for another project that they wanted to source. And without this solution, they would have had to wait until the next year. And we all know time kills all deals. So this became, yes, I'm going to get, what is it, almost $8,000 in commission for the customer by going through this process, finding $20,000 of delta spend for the customer, then equate it to, I can't give that case study because it didn't go through us, but we're proud to say it because that's exactly the function. They then found $20,000 a month in budget to go find something else to sell to that customer without the customer having to find additional budget internal to their company. This is the power of the platform. This is the power of data. And this is also the hammer for you. So, again, I know we talked through this really quickly. I just want to make sure that we leave the best hook possible, letting you know how much money you can make by spending just a little bit of time in discovery.
I love it. Uh, Big topic, it would be AI, always a hot subject. You incorporate any sort of AI tech with VCOM's position. What do you tell customers who are looking at this with AI?
Yes, yes, and yes.
Yeah.
AI is it's part of our life. It's integrated into our platform. So you could simply say to our agent, AI agent that's built into our service, how many circuits do I have in Texas? Answer. How many circuits that are under 50 utilization? Answer. How many assets do I have out of term in the next 6 months? Answer. So the answer is absolutely we have AI. The other answer is it is becoming more and more a part of how we deal with everyday life. So we have our own agent that we monitor, we manage. And it has also grown by feedback from our customers and partners. So it is not just an LLM that's getting random information. It is growing its knowledge base by the need of the customers and partners. So yes, we have AI. AI is also your friend.
I love this. And in the last 60 seconds, let's do something I maybe should have started at the very beginning of this convo. I'm
Real
Jess
quick,
VanVorst.
Jess.
Oh, go ahead. Jameson,
We are
go ahead.
SOC compliant. We have not been, I'm gonna knock on wood as much as I can find it. Um, Probably amount of time, right? This is we live in technology, but we do have compliancy at the ready if needed. Usually for banks, government agencies, we go through that pretty often, so we can give you as much as you need.
Love it. Okay, quick intro. Jess VanVorst, VP of Partner Success here at Become. Jamison Powell, go ahead and introduce yourself real quick for
Yep.
those that don't know
Uh,
us.
Jamison Powell, Director of Lifecycle Management. Again, we talk about the managed services and software. So I run a team here who is ready to hop in and support you guys. Again, any opportunities, thoughts, questions, scenarios you want to run past me, I'll be your point man there. I'll obviously get you connected with someone local who can support you and shake your hand. We're just looking forward to it.
Love it. And it looks like we have one more hand raise. I'm going to give Chris or Christopher an opportunity to ask a question. Christopher, anything you want to ask us? Oh, mistake. Okay. At the last minute too, Christopher. Okay. Well, thanks for hanging on regardless. Truly appreciate you guys spending your lunch hour with us, regardless of where you are. And reach out if you have questions. We'll be in touch. Talk soon. Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys.